God is faithful, and they are being faithful to God by keeping the promise that they made individually as a single. When they were on fire for God, they each made a commitment that one of these days, God, I want to serve. I want to have the privilege and the opportunity of serving you in the mission field. And when God brought them together as a couple, they also prayed and made this commitment. God, we as a family want to serve you in the mission field when time allows and opportunity arises. And they are keeping their promise, and they are in the mission field right now. And so let's have Tony and do whatever he needs to do. I think, Judy, you'll have to come up here. Members of New Life.
Hi, New Life. I feel much better because Pastor Eric has acknowledged that we get to still be members. I was saying in the first service, for those of you who don't know us, we are Tony and Judy. Our kids, Austin and Hannah, are up in youth service right now. But Austin and Hannah are now almost 17 and 15. We left Houston when our kids were 10 and 8, just barely 10 and 8, and it feels like a long time we've been gone. You guys actually look pretty good, but there are a lot of new, younger faces, and I saw Abraham and Cindy with a baby, and I was like, the babies have had babies now. Time has definitely gone by. We were saying earlier that it always feels really good to come back to church here. Our families, I think, like our brothers and sisters and our moms and dads have, I think all of them might be in different houses. Almost all of them are in different houses and locations than when we first moved. And so nobody's house really feels like home. We sold our home and our car before we moved to Kenya. And so this sanctuary is a little bit of feeling back at home. So we're always grateful for the warm welcome you guys give us and all the people who still remember us and come say hi and give us hugs. We're grateful. For all you new people, we would love to meet you guys and get to know you because we have a soft spot in our heart for New Life. This is where our spiritual journeys as adults and as a couple really was formed, and that has really carried us through our mission time. So my husband's gonna give the talk, and I'm gonna say, see you guys later.
All right, good morning, New Life. Yes, it's always wonderful to be back. It is like coming back home. So many good memories being here at this church, and so many good friends. And yes, Judy says you all look good, but you guys are older. And so am I. Man, we came in our 20s. I remember we used to do prayer for children. You know, we have way too many children there, but man, we're not in our 20s anymore, Joe. I'm just looking your direction. I'm not pointing you out. Today we're going to talk about the long road to obedience. When we go on these mission trips, and you guys do it all the time, it was a big part of our experience here at New Life. You know, you go into a field, you're really excited, you land, and for 2 weeks you just serve. You're ready to go. And you serve. Adrenaline is pumping, God is working, and you get so excited. When you go long term, things change after a while. You know, there's still the initial excitement, but then after a while, the mundane kind of sets in. We're doing dishes, we're packing lunches, just the usual stuff, right? And then around year 4 or year 6, people say there's this missionary itch that happens, where things that were so exciting are no longer exciting. Things that were cool are frustrating. Little things are really getting annoying. And so at some point, you just have to just keep pushing through. So that's a little bit of what we're going to be talking about today. But we're always thankful to be able to come back. We get glimpses of reverse culture shock. You guys might experience that a little bit with your short-term trips, but the longer that you are away, when you come back, things that were so normal don't feel as normal anymore. Like a previous time we came back, we were just stunned by how big everything is. Everybody's house, particularly in Texas, so big. You're like, the living room is like bigger than our whole house. The cars are huge. I was getting squished by an Expedition and a Tahoe the other day and didn't know what to do. But this time, it was the speed of things. I'm just amazed by speed. I mean, you guys drive so fast. In Kenya, we're capped at 80 kilometers an hour, which is probably like 55 miles an hour. And I feel comfortable driving a bit 5 miles over the speed limit, not 10. I'm afraid I'm gonna get pulled over. But even doing that, driving from Dallas to Austin and Austin to here, people are just like blowing past me. Amazon Prime, we still keep our Amazon Prime membership, in part because we can stream movies, but it's also helpful to send gifts to our families. And if we have a visitor coming from America, we can send them things, medical supplies, and they can bring it with them. So my dad, as he's getting older, his hearing is really bad. So much so that he's sitting next to me and he doesn't understand what I'm saying. And sometimes he just nods, because he doesn't like to keep asking, can you repeat that? And I noticed that he doesn't like to wear his hearing aids, but he likes to wear his AirPods. And he has an older version. And I discovered that the newer version has a software update that you can use actually as a hearing aid. I was like, oh man, this would kill two birds with one stone. And so I skipped a few things. That's our family. Our son, our daughter. Oh, that's the Kenyan beach. People think about safaris when they go to Kenya, but the beaches are amazing. White sand, blue waters. You guys are welcome to come visit us. This is Kajabi Hospital, where we serve. And this is an aerial picture. That's our house. Little blue dot right there. That's where we live, as we live on the edge of the Great Rift Valley. My wife and I, we serve as medical doctors. Judy's a pediatrician. I'm an internal medicine doctor. We love to take care of patients and try to do the best we can with the resources that we have. We love teaching and training. We get to lead Bible studies and get out of the hospital and mentor these trainees and to learn to love Jesus and to love Jesus in their work. So, sorry, that was some background information. Back to Amazon Prime. So, I got excited, got ahead of myself. So I ordered these AirPods for my dad, I think last Saturday, right? And it was like $345, $350. I put the order in. Boop. Next thing I know, it gets delivered at $645 in less than 3 hours. That is amazing. You guys are not responding because you don't think it's amazing. You guys are so used to this, right? And I know this because I asked my brother-in-law, and he's like, yeah, if it doesn't come overnight, it might as well be a week. I'm so frustrated, right? And if it doesn't come within 2 days, he's like checking the tracking, refresh. Where's my package, right? And this expels to other things. His internet is really fast. So when we watch Netflix in the Kenya, sometimes it will buffer, right? And it'll buffer. And even me, after a few seconds, I'll click refresh. Oh, there's something wrong. I got to refresh that. And to be fair, our favorite button on Netflix is the skip intro. We love watching Amazing Race with our kids, and every time, our kids are like, skip intro. It's almost as fun as the next episode button. But that's our culture, right? Our culture, we want things fast. In Kenya, not everything moves fast. We love Christmas cards. Thank you so much for those who are sending them to us. We do tend to get them around March or April. And so this is the beautiful Pack family. And they sent their card. We're so excited. They got theirs around end of March, I think, which actually not bad. If you see, it was actually missent to Thailand. So I don't know, Kenya, Thailand. It made it to us. We were super excited to see their beautiful faces. This is a card that Judy's brother sent Judy. And this one actually came, I think, in January. And we were so excited. We couldn't believe it got to us so fast until we realized that it was dated 2020. And we got it 2024. And so he actually sent it when he was living in the Seattle area, and we got it after he moved to Dallas. So, yeah, things don't move quickly. We wait on things. We wait for medicines, wait for supplies, wait for healing. Patients often have to walk hours to be seen. So it's a slower pace of life. Roads are bad. This is actually one of the better roads because it's tarmacked. But even after like 3 or 4 years, you can see all the potholes that are there, so that slows you down, damages your car. Most of the roads in Kajabi are just dirt and rock, and so during the rainy season, it gets incredibly muddy. And I don't know how those two motorcycles, we call them picky-pickies, they're loaded up with like 4 or 5 twin foam mattresses each, and they're trying to navigate the muck. But it's a good analogy for our lives. Many times we are going about our way and then we run into potholes and unexpected things. Sometimes you feel like you just get stuck and you can't move beyond it. And so that's what we see in Kenya. This culture of speed spills into our spiritual lives. We pray about things, and when God doesn't answer, we get antsy, right? Are we praying the right prayer, and what's wrong? We read the Bible, and we expect our hearts to change, but often they don't, and our quiet times can be dry. Faithfulness is more like a marathon, as they often say. It's not a sprint. It's often slow, often steady, most often unseen. Eugene Peterson wrote a classic book that our team recently read. This is the first time I had read it, but found it to be a real blessing. I encourage you guys to check it out. He writes, "There's a great market for religious experience in our world. There's little enthusiasm for the patient acquisition of virtue. There's little patience for the slow grind of spiritual growth." But that's the reality. Our spiritual growth is not Amazon Prime. It's not 2-day shipping. But it's the slow, steady saying yes to God. So that's what we're going to talk about today, what it means to walk that long road, to obey day after day, even when progress is slow. To trust God is that God is working in every step. We use Abraham's life as an example, exploring from chapter 12 to chapter 22. Chapter 12, when he says yes to God. Chapter 22, when God asks him to sacrifice his son Isaac. And how does he get from point A to point B? So 3 points. Did my best to do a 3-point sermon. Long obedience begins with a clear call, not a clear map. Before we can begin upon this journey of long obedience, we need to take that first step. And that's saying yes to God's call, even when the destination is not clear. We'll be going through several passages in Genesis, but will be the first one. So why don't we read this together, and we can begin. The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all people on earth will be blessed through you." So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai, their nephew Lot, and all the possessions that they accumulated, and the people that acquired in Haran. And they set out from the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. This passage contains the famous Abrahamic blessing, where God says that he will bless Abraham so that he can be a blessing to many. In fact, not just to his family, but the nations. And it's the same blessing that extends to us as believers. God blesses us not just that we can be blessed, but that we can be a blessing to others. And that's why you care about your coworkers and your neighbors and your house church members. And it causes us to go overseas to tell people about the love of Christ. Abraham received the call, but not a detailed plan. He had many reasons to say no. He had a family, he had land, he had a whole way of life, he had livestock. Maybe this sounds a little bit familiar to you. I don't know what God is calling you or has been leading and putting on your heart. But these are good reasons that people stay, right? Family, work, lifestyle, probably not livestock. Do you guys still do chickens? I remember I came back one time and everybody was like getting chickens. Maybe not anymore. Our family experienced a similar call, and when we moved to Houston in 2006, we got married. Pastor Eric married us, and shortly after our wedding in May, we went on our first mission trip, and this was to Thailand. And so, sorry, it's an older picture, so it's a little fuzzy, but let me identify some of the usual suspects. So this is our good and faithful church administrator, Lisa Tran Bennett, before she was a Bennett. Tony Long is here. Diane is here. I think she was just a college student before she became a dentist. The Liaos are serving faithfully in Boston. And Roger kind of scared me when I first met him. I kept hearing that he was like Secret Service or something, but nobody really knew and nobody could really say. So he was a man of mystery. But yeah, we started our marriage going together on our first mission trip together. Shortly that, we had many others as I shared. This is us arriving long-term in Nairobi for the first time. We had 2 little kids in tow, 2 NOK kids, and we were real excited. And how do we get from here to here? That was 11 years. It was saying yes to God in little things. We said yes to going to Thailand, and then Laos, and then Vietnam as a family, and then Jordan. I went with Caleb and some other members. Judy went to Kyrgyzstan, and actually that was the trip that really set us on the path, because at that point she was speaking to Pastor Moon, Johan's father, who had been a dentist for many years. And as Judy was explaining our situation of how we're praying about where God's calling us and when we would go, maybe we would wait until our kids graduated from high school, and then we could go as empty nesters. And he quickly said, "What are you talking about? Your kids are young. This is the best time to go. Don't wait till they're teenagers and have all the teenage angst. Go now." So Judy came back from that, and she said, "We got to go. In the next 2 years, we're going to go." And so it took, some people can say yes to God really quickly. And I wish I was kind of that way. I think Judy and I were a little more deliberate. We're like Gideon, checking the fleece over and over again, right? We had neighbors in Kajabi who had some church background, but they were very intellectual, and they were not believers. And it wasn't until in their adult life, after their married life, they read Lee Strobel's Case for Christ. And, it was very apologetic and very logical. And they read it, and they were like, "This makes sense. We're Christians." And they decided to be Christians. And then they were reading the Bible, and they read something about go. And they're like, "Oh, Christians are supposed to do missions. We should do missions." And so he's a plastic surgeon. There's a program called the Samaritan's Purse Post-Residency Program that gets doctors to the field quicker. Because the longer doctors stay and work in the U.S., they kind of adapt to the lifestyle. It's harder for them to go. But Samaritan's Purse gets them out earlier. So they got it like 30 days before the deadline. They filled out the application. And on the application, it says, "How long have you been a Christian?" 1 month. "How long have you thought about missions?" 2 weeks. They got accepted. And so, yeah, when God calls, say yes, right? But sometimes you might be like us. We need a little bit more reassurance. The first part in the long obedience is we have to say yes to God. It gets really dark in Kajabi. For those of you guys that visit us, especially when there's no sun, but it's really beautiful on a clear night. This picture is taken by David Shirk, one of our teammates and good friends. Kenya House Church, who I think is doing refreshments. This is their house church missionary. But he's a great photographer, and you can actually see the Milky Way, and it's gorgeous. Sometimes when I walk back from call, I'm coming from the ICU at 2 in the morning, I look up, and this just helps me to decompress. But at the same time, when the moon is gone, it is dark, really dark. And the Kenyans have an amazing ability to walk on the rocky roads without stumbling and falling. I can't do that. I'll twist my ankle. So I break out my light. We call it a flashlight. They call it a torch in Kenya. But it's not that strong, right? It's not the as seen on TV flashlight that lights up the whole neighborhood, right? It just lights a little bit in front of you, just a few steps. But it's enough so that you don't lose your step, right? Psalm 19 reminds us, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. And that's the way God intended it. He doesn't tell us the whole path. He tells us enough for us to take those next steps. Point 2, the long obedience endures doubts, delays, and detours. So in Genesis 17, get my notes here. It says, God said to Abraham, "As for Sarai, your wife, you are no longer to call her Sarai. Her name will be Sarah. I will bless her and surely give you a son by her. I will bless her so that she will be the mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her." Abraham fell face down. He laughed and said to himself, "Will the son be born to a man 100 years old? Will Sarah bear a child at the age of 90? Abraham is known for his faith. He believed God. It was credited to him as righteousness. But even him, he had moments of doubt, as you can see right here. We have many doubts on our road to faithfulness, many things to make us wonder whether we're doing the right thing. Is God even there? We see a lot of really sick patients in Kenya for a number of reasons. People come with very complicated illnesses. They come really sick. They come really late. When you're living hand to mouth, so to speak, what you eat is what you grow or eat or herd is what you eat. It's hard to spend money on preventative things. Why go to the doctor when you feel well until the tumor is now this big? So they come, and it's really sad, particularly the children that come too late that Judy and her team take care of. There are also system things that makes it really hard sometimes. Even when you're taking care of the patient in front of you, there are greater system things that prevent us from being able to provide the care that we want. This is shared by a missionary friend of mine, and this idea that, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, we want to do all of these three things well. We want to have excellent care, we want to take care of the poor, and we want to be able to keep doing it. We want it to be sustainable. But the reality, due to poor equipment, poor supply chain, corruption, financial struggles, and our friends who work in DRC, there's rebels. He talks about, he's a real missionary. He'll say, like, hey, Tony, yeah, there was some gunfire the other night, but I could tell that they were shooting at each other, the rebels, and they weren't shooting at us, so we're good to go. It's like, I don't have to differentiate which way the bullets are flying, right? So it's a huge, complex mess. Many times you can do two of the things. You can provide care for the poor that's sustainable, but it's often not very good care. You can provide care for the poor that's excellent, but it's not sustainable because poor people can't pay. You can provide excellent care that's sustainable, but pretty soon you're pricing out the people that you're really trying to serve. So navigating that creates lots of doubts of, will we ever be able to get where we think we need to be? Long obedience endures delays. Have you guys heard of the marshmallow test? So this is an old study, a psychological study. They redid it and they reshot it, so you may have seen some videos of it. It's pretty comical. But they take these little kids, 4 and 5-year-olds, they put a marshmallow in front of them, they say, hey, you can have this marshmallow now, or I'm gonna step out for a little bit, and when I come back, you get 2 marshmallows. And so they step out, and they wait 15 minutes. So I don't know how many of you guys have 4 and 5-year-olds, but 15 minutes is a long time. And it's really comical because they start covering their eyes, they start singing, they're like hiding under the table, trying to last the 15 minutes. And some do, but many don't, right? And so when they followed these kids over the next couple decades and see how they did, and what they found, those who waited had higher SAT scores, better jobs, healthier relationships, and lower body mass index. So what was the take-home? Take-home was delayed gratification, and self-control led to success. Yeah? So you might be thinking, oh man, I'm a 1 marshmallow person. Or maybe you're sitting next to your spouse and you're like, oh, that explains it. But take heart. So they actually, this was 1960, they did it at Stanford. They redid the study in 2018 at NYU and UC Irvine. They used a bigger population of kids. They standardized for parenting, style, socioeconomics, and other factors. And what they found was it actually, your one decision at the age of 4 actually doesn't make all of the difference, right? So as my kids would say, I felt like I was cooked. But you're not cooked. You're not screwed if you took the marshmallow. There's still hope for you. Huh? And there's still hope for Abraham and Sarah. What did they do? Well, God's timing was clearly not the same as Abraham or Sarah's timing. Genesis 16, we see that Abraham was 75 years old when he was promised to be the father of nations, but he had no children. And Sarah carried the burden of childlessness. Back in that culture, that was a really, really hard thing. It's hard now, yeah? I know that there's some miracle babies that have been born since we came back, and we're super happy to see that. We ran to Angel and Gus, and I don't know if it's his mom or Angel's mom, but they were carrying a baby, and I was just saying hi to Gus, and he said, oh, by the way, that's my daughter. It's like, what? Right? And by the way, we're expecting another. What? Oh, praise God, right? But back in the day, a woman's worth and value was highly tied into whether she could have children or not, and Sarah couldn't. Back in that day, it was culturally acceptable to give another woman to your husband as a second wife so that she can bear children through that second wife. And so Sarah gave her Egyptian slave Hagar to Abraham. Once Hagar was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress Sarah, and so Sarah was very upset. She was very abusive, unkind, and so Hagar fled. Angel of the Lord followed her, promised her that he would make her descendants, too numerous to count, and virtually that she should go back to Sarah and submit to her. And she did. She gave birth to Ishmael when Abraham was 86. Sadly, the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael have continued to be in conflict to this day. So when they took their timing into their own hands, it resulted in pain and brokenness that has lasted not just in their lives, but in generations. But how does God respond? God doesn't say, well, you guys screwed up. You took the first marshmallow. Good luck. No, he doesn't. Genesis 21, 1 through 5. It says, now the Lord was gracious to Sarah, as he had said. And the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time that God had promised him. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah bore him. And when his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him, as God commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. 25 years after the initial promise. They waited 25 years before the promised child had come. So it just illustrates that the long obedience, the road that he calls us to, we have to confront doubts, but we also have to confront what we can perceive as delays, but it's actually God's timing. A long obedience endures doubts, delays, and detours. Abraham's journey from chapter 12 to chapter 22 is not straightforward. He had many, many detours. It was anything but a straight line of what he may have expected in his mind when he was called from Ur. Some of the detours including famine. When he got to the Canaan, it was not a land flowing of milk and honey, but there was a famine. So he fled to Egypt for a time. At that point, he lied that his wife Sarah was his sister to Pharaoh. He later had to part ways with Lot, his nephew, to avoid conflict. He then has to plead with God to rescue Lot when Sodom and Gomorrah was to be destroyed. He, of course, has his relationship with Hagar that results in his son Ishmael. He then lies that Sarah is his sister a second time, but this time to Abimelech. And then he's asked to sacrifice his son Isaac. So I would suspect that he would not have, when he left his homeland, this is not what he would have expected, with many detours to this promise that God had given him. In our lives, we've experienced some detours too, not to compare, they're just different. But when we landed in Kenya, within the first month, Hannah got cholera, and she wasn't that sick, but we admitted her to the hospital out of abundance of caution and the fact that the entire town was like freaking out. We didn't want to be the new missionaries who brought cholera epidemic to our town. So we said, okay, we'll admit her, and she did okay. That same week, there was a terrorist attack at one of the hotels in Nairobi, and so everybody was on edge. Needless to say, we write these newsletters to update people. We did not include this in our first newsletter because we knew our parents were reading it, and we did not want them to hear about cholera and terrorist attack in our first month in Kenya. COVID pandemic hit. Man, that's another whole sermon to itself in terms of what we experience, the hardships, the burden and pain that we still carry from taking care of COVID patients in rural Africa. We were here in December of 2023, right after we got back. There was a big doctor strike. Kenya was having a big debt crisis due to poor management, corruption, and so forth. And so they couldn't pay for basic things. And one of the things they need to pay for every year is medical trainees, like interns. Individual hospitals don't pay for them. The hospital subsidizes their living expense. And so they didn't pay any of the trainees. And many government hospitals depend upon these trainees to do the work, not just learn, but to do the work. So all the government hospitals shut down. So patients, the only options they had was to go to a private hospital or a mission hospital. So our hospital was just overflowing with patients, people coming in, having missed dialysis, not getting their treatments, delayed surgeries. Judy and I were in the ICU for the most part. We only have 8 ventilators for the hospital. And sometimes if pediatrics is light and medicine is full, we'll share ventilators. So we were checking every single day. How many ventilators do you have? You know, how many people can we take care of? And the answer was never enough. We endured droughts and famine. That's probably our second year, the longest drought that Kenya had ever experienced before. For us, it was inconvenience. We had to take bucket showers. I kind of joke with my kids that, when I was young, I took bucket showers, and it's character building. Cold bucket showers, right? But after 2 months of it, I was like, you guys have enough character. We need our water back on. But it was really painful for our Kenyan colleagues, particularly their family members who are farmers and ranchers, and their livestock were just dying. After that, we had rains, lots of rains. Thank you guys for praying for rain. We had so much rain that it started flooding, and we had a really bad mudslide just like a kilometer to the west of Kajabi, where part of the mountain basically just went off in the middle of the night. Not unlike the tragedy that happened in July 4th here in Texas, but people were just washed away. Villages were just annihilated. It took a long time to heal and recover from that. We've had protests, civil unrest, just Gen Z protesting against the government and all the corruption that's happening. It hit really close to home about a month ago, where some of our staff members, they encountered, they were protesters, but they were more, they call them goons, and they would just stop cars and demand money in order to pass. There was tear gas and so forth. So the hospital actually had to send an ambulance with our staff members so that they could get through, because the protesters typically wouldn't harass ambulances. And there's the health of our aging parents. About 2.5 years ago, maybe 3, my mom was diagnosed with dementia, and just watching her, progress over that time, it's been hard. We were there just a few days ago, and my mom, she sees us. I'm pretty sure she knows who we are. But like the third day we were there, I was having breakfast with her, and she says, "Oh, where do you live?" I was like, "Kenya. I'm in Kenya, Mom. What do you do there?" She's never asked that before. Do you have kids? I was like, "Yeah, I have 2. They're in the bedroom right there, right?" Yeah. And so it gets harder. My dad, being the primary caregiver, it's a big burden for him. So he's stressed out. He's a bit depressed, struggling with his own mortality. He's not a believer yet, so he's really struggling with the purpose of his life at this point. Judy's dad had heart stents placed a few years back, and so there's lots of things that keep us from what we think we're going to do for God. But despite these challenges or setbacks, God is faithful. He's always there. And in fact, he uses these very events in our lives to build our faith. When I was young, I thought my faith always grew when I went to a retreat, a revival, and I felt good, close to God, and I thought, oh man, I'm really growing, but I really wasn't growing, right? The growth comes through slow, steady times of just saying yes to God, that mundane obedience. And it's what you guys do here, the 3 axes: Sunday service, Friday house church, weekday Bible studies. You just keep doing it, and then your faith builds layer after layer. Just like a plant doesn't just suddenly appear out of the rock. It's got a root system there. It's taken weeks, months, slowly by slowly, the plant grows until it cracks the rock, and it comes out. Galatians 6:9 says, "Let us not become weary of doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." And last point, long obedience is rooted in God's faithfulness, goodness, and presence. Genesis 22. God says, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love." He's talking to Abraham. "Take Isaac and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on the mountain I will show you." And of course, actually the next verse, it says, early in the morning, Abraham packs up his things takes a donkey, takes Isaac, takes 2 servants. Early the next morning, he didn't contemplate it. He didn't think about it. I mean, I'm sure he thought about it, but it's not like he sat there, wondering. But he said yes. And the only thing I can think of, of course we know that at the end, before Abraham is about to sacrifice Isaac, God provides a ram and a way out. But Abraham proves his trust in God. But you have to ask how. How does this happen? How does a father say yes to this request? How does a father say yes? And not just any son, this is the promised son. This is a son he waited 25 years for. This is a son that his wife Sarah miraculously gave birth to in their old age. This is the promised son, that the nations would be blessed. And how did he say yes? Well, we get a clue in Hebrews 11. In Hebrews 11 it says, by faith Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. He who had embraced the promises was about to sacrifice his one and only son, even though God had said to him, it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. Abraham reasoned that God could even raise the dead. And so in that manner of speaking, he did receive Isaac back from death. So how did Abraham say yes? We look back to Genesis 12 to 21. He saw God's faithfulness through every detour, through every delay. He saw his goodness even when there was really bad things that were happening. And most importantly, he knew God's presence, and he knew that God was with him. And because of that, he could say yes. We've experienced a bit of the same too in our walk, different ways. God has been so faithful to us in Kenya. We've seen him answer prayers. I mean, I believe in the answer prayers when I was here at New Life, but to see them so vividly and so readily is amazing to see God's faithfulness. And you guys lifted up many of those prayers. You guys prayed with us. You prayed for us. Sometimes you guys were the answered prayer in sending people or sending resources and supporting the ministry and what God is doing there. So we thank you guys. And we're so grateful. When we think about you guys, we're so thankful. We're reminded of God's goodness with every child that leaves the pediatric ICU. We're reminded of his sweet goodness when that trainee, who is mainly focused on his career and gaining knowledge, grows in his faith and his compassion for the people he's taking care of. We see his goodness in our friends, our missionary friends, and our Kenyan colleagues. There's this deep bond that's forged when you're working together in challenging situations. And we're so thankful for God's goodness in that. And when our hearts are heavy with the death that we see, the injustice, the tragedy that sometimes happens like day after day, he reminds us that he is with us, even in the midst of it. He's with us in the mess. He's with us in the brokenness. Isaiah 41:10 says, so do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, and I will help you. I will uphold you with my right hand. Now, some of you may say, well, that's all well and good, Tony. I get it. It's very inspiring. But you don't understand. I'm doing my best. I'm doing everything that I can, and things just aren't working out. My work is not going well. I'm worried I might get laid off. Maybe my marriage is not doing well, and we've done counseling, and we're still having problems. I'm starting to lose hope. My house church is not doing well. The members just are struggling, are fighting with one another. Our kids are not doing well. They're having problems academically, emotionally, spiritually. That's probably one of the most painful things for a congregation in our stage when our kids are not doing well. Well, how do you respond to that? A good friend of ours, Eric McAuliffe, he's a family medicine doctor. He serves in Burundi with Ted John, for those of you that know him, who is also sent from our church. He gave a talk to the CMDA, which is the Christian Medical and Dental Association, recently, which I highly encourage you to listen to, particularly those who are in the medical field, but even those who are not. He talks about what the kingdom of God is and how our work and profession fits in the kingdom. So what does it mean to practice medicine in the kingdom of God? What does it mean to be a God's tool of healing and justice in the world? But there's a comment that he made that really struck me as I was listening to the podcast. He said, "We have a kingdom that is already but not yet. We have a work that is always incomplete, and it always will be. But it doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong." As a medical doctor, we tend to be pretty introspective. When something goes wrong, we think, what happened? Could I have done something better? Did I hurt this patient? And the work is always incomplete, particularly in Kenya. There are always sick people. There will always be more sick people. And the work never seems to be done. And the reality is it won't. It will never be to our satisfaction or what we think it should be. But even when things don't work out, it doesn't mean that we're doing it wrong. I'm not saying that there's not room for improvement. I'm not saying there's not room for growth. Of course, we all have regrets and things that we could do better. But if you're fixing your eyes on God and you're doing your best and things aren't working out, it's not because you're doing it wrong all the time. Missionaries struggle. One of the biggest struggles is their kids. When their kids are not doing well, health issues, when they stray from the faith. Pastors' kids, same thing, but all of us. We even heard the testimony from Joshua. Joseph. In his testimony, he talked about how he grew up in the church, but, he wrestled with his faith. I'm sure his parents really struggled and prayed for him. Yeah? And I'm sure that they were really heartbroken as he walked this, but the Spirit spoke to him, and he came back. Parents, we really need to hear this. If we do everything right as parents, most of the time, our kids do well, but there's no guarantee. Sometimes they don't do well, and that can be really painful. But it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Shepherds, church leaders, village leaders, town leaders, our pastoral staff, Pastor Eric, Mia, Sang, and Chris. Anytime you have people under your care and things don't work out, it can be really hard. But stay faithful. It doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. Long obedience is about direction. It's not about perfection. Abraham shows us that. He wasn't perfect. He made mistakes. But God is faithful. So when we are faithless, God is faithful. 1 Corinthians 15:58. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourself fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. Your labor in your workplace is never in vain. Your labor for your house churches is never in vain. Parents, I struggle with this. It's like, am I doing right as a dad? Am I doing right as a husband? Am I doing right for my patients? It doesn't always feel like it is. But our labor is never in vain when you do it unto the Lord. I was crying in these sermons. I told myself I was not going to cry, so I didn't. That didn't count. Philippians 1:6. He who began a good work will carry it to completion. Matthew 28, the word from our Lord. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. So how do we apply this? How do we walk in obedience? Well, there's no, mystery to it. It's actually pretty straightforward. And that's a good thing. Establish daily rhythms. How's your prayer life? How is your scripture reading life? How's your Sabbath life? That's really important, particularly for doctors, missionaries, many of you who are very high functioning, serving the Lord. How are you resting? That's God's command to us. It's us trusting in him when we set time to rest and restore. Again, the 3 axes built into the DNA of New Life. Doing those simple things, those rhythms, help us to grow. Staying in community, again, in the DNA of New Life. In house church. How is your house church relationships? How are you going there? Maybe you're excited. Maybe things are going great. Praise God. For some of you, maybe not so. Maybe there's relationship issues. Maybe there's commitment issues. As a church, how do we make sure people are not falling through the house church system? Are we keeping out for those that are struggling? Tracking God's faithfulness. Healthy for all of us to remember his goodness. Write it down. I've never been a big journaler, but in any way, whatever way you can, reflect upon his goodness. And that will, like Abraham, encourage you one step at a time. And adjust your expectations. Faith is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So don't expect things to change quickly. And when things are not changing quickly, it's okay. God is still there. God is still working. This is, I think my last slide. This is a road that leads to Ariana and David Shirk's house. Again, they're house church missionaries. It's a pretty bad road. It's probably one of the worst roads in our town. You can see how they try to fix it, and they'll whenever there's a construction job at the hospital, they'll take the construction debris and they'll just throw it in the holes, and then cars will drive over it and eventually flatten it down, but it doesn't really work. Rains come and you get these ruts. You see a cinder block buried in there. There's nails. You get nails in your tires. It's a big nuisance. Yeah? But I think it's a nice image of what our walk sometimes looks like. The journey that we walk on. Yeah, it's broken. It's kind of patched up. Sometimes barely holding together. I think it's a good reminder that the long broken road is still sacred ground. The long broken road is still sacred ground. It's through walking this road that we find refining of our souls. We grow layer by layer as we walk these challenging roads and times. It's through walking these roads that we find healing for the broken, the brokenness inside ourselves and the brokenness in those that God brings to us. And we're all walking together, experiencing healing. And it leads to the gospel. It always leads to the gospel as we walk this road. We walk this road not because we are strong, but we walk this road because God is near. That's his promise to us. And that's where we find joy. We sang about it the first song. It's not about, grinning and pulling you up by your bootstraps and just obeying because that's what we're supposed to do. When we walk this road, there is unexplainable joy as we do it. And that's part of God's grace for us. So I hope that speaks to you. It spoke to me as I was preparing it. Be blessed. Let me pray for us. Lord, thank you that you know us, each and every person in this room. You call us by name. You've drawn us to yourself. Your Spirit speaks to us. Help us to take the words that were shared in this message. I don't know what it means to each person, but you know. We thank you that your promises are true, that as you call us into obedience, we don't have to have everything together. We don't have to be put together. All you ask is we put one foot in front of the other and just keep following you the best we can. I pray, Lord, that you will release unnecessary guilt, unnecessary regrets that is not of you. That as we serve, we do the best we can and continue to grow and continue to do better, that you honor that our labor for you is never in vain, that you use it. You use the mountains, you use the valleys, you use the successes and the failures. You use it in us, through us, and you are making all things new. We thank you, Lord. Your presence is so sweet. We thank you for being here with us this morning. I pray this in Jesus' name.